everybody, I am Deepika from LearnoHub, a free learning platform where you can study physics, chemistry, maths, biology absolutely for free only at learnohub.com. Students, today we are going to talk about our next chapter, that is the excretory system. So we talked about circulation. Now is the time to talk about how the waste products are being excreted from our body. So let's start with the chapter. Excretion. So if we break the word excretion, so we will get EX and cretes, right? CERETE. So X stands for out. So when we are giving out something, right? So that out, and so crete means to flow. So it is basically a process of removal of wastes or the chemical waste, mainly the nitrogenous waste from our body. So that is called as excretion. Now if we talk about excretion, it is a very, very important phenomena. It is a very important process in our body. So there are many many substances which are produced inside our body during our metabolic activities. Say carbon dioxide is being produced, there is excess of water that is present inside our body, there are nitrogenous waste. So nitrogenous waste means all those waste which have nitrogen in them, like urea, right? So these waste are not very they are not accepted by our body, and if they remain in our body, they basically poison our body, right? So these things need to be removed out of our body. So they maintain homeostasis or a steady state condition in the body. So how our body is being coping with the external environment or maintaining a balance with the external environment. So it is basically homeostasis, right? So there are large number of products that are being formed during the metabolic activities in our body, and these nitrogenous waste become toxic if they are retained in our body. So our body needs to remove them so as to get rid of these toxic substances. Now the substances which are to be eliminated from our body. So when the metabolic activities they happen in our body, so there are many waste products that are being formed which are toxic to our body. So they are carbon dioxide, water, the excess water or the water vapors, then there are nitrogenous metabolic waste, there are excess salts and vitamins, there are bile salts as well. So all of them needs to be removed from our body. So anything that is in excess is not at all accepted by our body. So we need to remove them, right? So as water is needed by our body, but we do not need excess water, right? So that needs to be removed. So first one is carbon dioxide, and I will add over here water vapor. So both of them, they are the product of respiration, right? So when we respire, so carbon dioxide, the glucose is metabolized in our body and it leads to the production of carbon dioxide and water vapors. So this carbon dioxide and water vapor, they are toxic to our body. So carbon dioxide is eliminated from lungs when we exhale, and water vapors are removed by our skin as sweat. Clear? So I hope this is clear. Then talking about the nitrogenous waste. So these nitrogenous waste can be urea. So they are uric acid and ammonia, right? So I will write NH3. So that is the formula of ammonia. So all of them, they are the nitrogenous waste, and our body has this urea. So urea has a lot of nitrogen, so that is why it is called as nitrogenous waste. So this urea, if it gets accumulated in our body, it leads to the poisoning, right? So there are many amino acids which are being produced in our body. So these are the basically the product of proteins. So when the proteins get metabolized, so they get converted into amino acid. So these excess amino acids, they are not at all needed by our body, so our body needs to excrete them out. So what our body does, our body excrete these substances, and when if in case this urea gets accumulated, it leads to the it leads to toxicity, and it leads to the poisoning in our body. So this urea needs to be eliminated, and it is eliminated by our kidneys, right? Then there are excess salts and excess vitamins. So mostly the water soluble vitamins like B and C, so all of them are removed by our kidneys. And an example of excess salts is say NaCl. So this is the excess salt which is present in our body, right? So I hope this is clear to everyone. The next one is the bile pigments. So these are the pigments which are the product of hemoglobin. So hemoglobin which is present in the RBCs. So this hemoglobin is basically breakdown, this is the product of breakdown of hemoglobin. So now when this hemoglobin, when these this hemoglobin gets broken down, so it gives a characteristic color to the blood, right? It gives that red color. So these are circulating in the blood. So these are extracted from blood by the liver, and liver then pours it into bile juice which is secreted into duodenum, right? So in duodenum it gives feces its characteristic yellow brown color. So basically finally when it is secreted into the duodenum, this pigment gets modified and it gives feces yellow brown color, right? And they are excreted by kidneys, or they are even excreted in urine also, right? So these pigments are also secreted in urine. Clear? So I hope all the eliminated substances which we have discussed are clear to you. All the substances which are being eliminated by our body, which are poisonous to our body, are clear. Now let us talk about the excretory organs which are present in our body. So the chief excretory organ in our body is kidneys. So kidneys are the primary excretory organs of our body, and they chiefly secrete out urea. So they filter out blood, they filter out the urea present in the blood, and they excrete out in the form of urine. Clear? Then next is, if we talk about skin, so our skin has sweat glands. These sweat glands, they remove excess water. So there is excess water that is being removed, and some excess salts like NaCl. So these are removed from our body through the skin. So it is this, all the sweat glands remove these excess water and these salts only when it is required for cooling purpose of the body. Otherwise it does not have that excretory function. Skin does not have that excretory function, right? Now talking about the next, that is lungs. So if we talk about lungs, we know what lungs excrete out. So they excrete out carbon dioxide that is produced during respiration in our body. The next one is liver. So if we talk about liver, liver actually detoxifies ammonia. It converts ammonia into urea, and this urea is thrown out of our body, right? It also detoxifies nicotine, drugs and alcohol that is consumed by humans. So these are the different excretory organs. So primary excretory organ is kidney, and rest three, skin, lungs and liver, are said to be the accessory excretory organs. So now is the time to discuss the primary excretory organ, that is the kidneys. So kidneys are always in pairs, right? So they are in pairs. In some of the individuals, they are said to be single. They are found to be single, but those cases are very rare. From by birth only, some people have only one kidney, but rest maximum maximum number of individuals have a pair of kidneys. So there are two kidneys, right? So these are the two bean shaped structures. So this is the shape of the kidney, which is 10 centimeter long and 6 centimeter wide, right? Then they are located on either side of the backbone. So we have a backbone in the center, right? And on the either side of the backbone, so these kidneys are present. They are protected by ribs. So ribs are there to protect these kidneys. Kidneys are very important because they are the primary excretory organs in our body. So they are very, very important. So they need protection. So who protects them? So ribs protect them. The next is right. There are two kidneys, right and left. So right kidney is slightly lower present in our body as compared to the left kidney. So there are ureters which are connected to each kidney. So there are two kidneys, right? So let's say these are the two kidneys. So each kidney is connected to ureter, and these ureters are then connected to the urinary bladder, right? So ureters, these arise from the notch or the hilum. So this is called as hilum, right? So this is the notch on the median surface of each kidney where ureters are connected, and the ureters, then they are finally, both of them are connected to the urinary bladder, which is present in the lower part of the abdomen. Then there is this pelvis. So this area is called as pelvis. It is the front end of the ureter, which is somewhat expanded in the kidney. So if this is the ureter, right, if this is the ureter, it is somewhat expanded in the front end of the kidney, in the kidneys, right? So this is called as pelvis. So now these kidneys, they produce urine, they filter out blood, they produce urine, and through these ureters, this urine, this liquid part will go into the urinary bladder. Inside urinary bladder, it is stored for some time, and finally it is thrown out of the body. So this is how the urine is, the basic process how urine is formed and how it is excreted out from our body. Now when the urine is poured into the urinary bladder through these ureters, so there are some splinter or the circular muscles which guard the opening of bladder through urethra, and as they relax only at the time of micturition, right, only at the time of urination under the impulse from the brain. So basically there are certain muscles, there are certain circular muscles or the splinter muscles which guard the opening of bladder into urethra. So this is bladder, right? So after bladder, this is urethra. So there are these splinter muscles or the circular muscles guarding this opening. So when a person has to pee, then only these muscles, they relax, these splinter muscles, or you can say these circular muscles, they relax, and at this time all the urine that is being collected in the urinary bladder is thrown out, right? So this process is called urination, or it is also called as micturition, and all this happens under the impulse from the brain. So when brain gets a signal that the bladder is full, then only a person urges to go to the washroom, right? So then only these muscles, they relax and the waste is thrown out. So let us go more into the detail of the structure of these kidneys. So the internal structure of the kidneys. So there are main two two sides of the kidney, right? So there are two main regions of the kidney. So one, the inner one is, the outer one is called as cortex. So this darker portion is called as cortex, and inner portion is called as, the inner lighter portion is called as medulla. So basically there are two regions, one is cortex and the second one is medulla. The first portion, the first region of the kidneys is medulla. So you will see this darker portion is cortex and the inner one is medulla, where you can see these finely stripped substance which are arranged in a conical pattern, right? So you can see these conical patterns. So these are what? These are finely stripped substances. So these are called these are the there are several conical pyramids which we can see in medulla. See, there are several conical pyramids, right? So this is called as medulla, and these things, the apex of each pyramid, right? So this apex of each pyramid is called as papillae, right? It projects into the pelvis of the kidney. So this is the pelvis, right? So this is the pelvis region. So they project into the pelvis of the kidneys, correct? So this is also clear. Now there is a portion of this cortical tissue which extends between the renal pyramid to form renal column. So this is the cortex. So this cortex tissue, it extends into this medulla region and it forms renal column. So these are the renal columns which are extending into the medulla, into these papillae, right? So this is called as renal columns. If we do deeply look into the internal structure of a kidney, we will find out that kidneys, they have enormous number of minute tubules, and these minute tubules are called as uriniferous tubules or nephron or renal tubule or kidney tubules, right? So these are the different names, and most commonly we call them as nephrons. Nephrons are the structural and functional units of the kidney. So there are millions of nephrons which are present inside the kidney, and these nephrons are those units which actually perform the function of filtering the waste out of the blood. First of all, the structure of the kidney tubules. So we will study the structure of the kidney tubules and then we will study their functions, right? So kidney tubules, or we can also call them as nephrons. So kidney tubules, so starting with their functions. So the first part over here is the Bowman's capsule. So this Bowman's capsule is basically a cup shaped structure. So can you see this structure? So this is a cup shaped structure which has a very thin wall. The wall is single cell thick and a single cell epithelium is there. Now there are the there is a hollow internal space continues within the tubules, right? So there is this hollow space which continues the tubules. So the tubules are continued from this particular Bowman's capsule. So the outer concavity of the cup has knot-like mass of blood capillaries. So it is something like this, a cup shaped structure, right? And this cup shaped structure has inside it a knot-like structure or knot-like mass which is called of blood capillaries, which is called as glomerulus. Glomerulus is what? It is a capillary network. So it is capillary, so blood comes into these capillaries for getting filtered, right? So the blood from various blood vessels, basically there are blood vessels which carry this blood to the kidneys. So that blood comes into these capillaries, or we call it as glomerulus, and from here the blood filter out the waste product that is present in the blood. This Bowman's capsule, right? So the Bowman's capsule and the glomerulus, which is a network of these capillaries. So together they are called as Malpighian capsule or the renal capsules. The first part of the tubule, or the first convoluted part of this kidney tubule, is PCT, that is proximal convoluted tubule, right? So after the Bowman's capsule, so this is the Bowman's capsule. Inside the Bowman capsule is a network of capillaries which is called as glomerulus. So after this there is what? So there is this tubule, right? So it is called as first convoluted tubule, which is also called as a PCT. Okay? So it is present in the cortex. So we have studied there are two regions in our kidneys. One is the cortex and one is the medulla. So cortex is the outer region, right? And when these pyramid shaped structure starts, that is the papillae starts, so this is said to be the medulla region. So this PCT is present in the cortex region of our kidneys. So what did we study about the structure of kidney tubule or the nephron? So the first thing, that was Bowman's capsule. The second thing, the capillary inside the Bowman capsule, that is glomerulus. And from here this convoluted part started, which is the first part, that is called as PCT, the proximal convoluted tubule, right? So this is the proximal part, or the part nearer to the the Bowman's capsule, right? So proximal stands for means the nearer, right? So then after the PCT there comes a loop of Henle. So it is not at all that convoluted, but it has a hairpin like structure. So something like this hairpin bend is there, right? So it extends into the medulla, the inner region of the kidneys, and then it returns back and enter into what region? Into the cortex region to form the next part of the kidney tubule, right? So this is called as loop of Henle. It is U-shaped, right? It is like a hairpin. It runs into the medulla, turns back and re-enter the cortex to continue to the next convoluted region of the tubule. Now the next is DCT, that is distal convoluted tubule, right? So this is the third part of the tubule, right? So if we talk about the tubular part, the tube part, so this is the second tubule, right? So this is called as a DCT. This is the second convoluted tubule, correct? So this is present in the cortex region. So all this started from the cortex region, loop of Henle extended into the medulla region and then came back to the cortex region. So it is present in the cortex region and it opens into the collecting duct, right? So all the kidney tubules, they open into the collecting duct and pours the urine in the pelvis region. Now these uriniferous tubules or these kidney tubules, so there are some more facts about them that you must know. So the first is the total number in both the kidneys. What is the total number of these uriniferous tubules in both the kidneys? So they are approximately 2 million, right? So there are so many nephrons present in our body. The second one is each kidney tubule is 4 to 5 centimeter in length. So the length is just 4 to 5 centimeter, but there are around 2 million of them present in our body. The next is the total length of all the tubules together. So if we take all the tubules together, what will be the total length of these tubules? So it will be more than 60 kilometers, right? So now they are more than 60 kilometers. This means that they provide a huge surface area for reabsorption of things, for reabsorption of water, for reabsorption of important things inside our body, important substances inside our body. The next is the blood flowing through kidneys per minute. In a single minute, how much blood flows through the kidney? So that is 1 liter, right? So in a minute, 1 liter of blood flows through our kidney. Then the kidney, the glomerular filtrate produced in 24 hours. So how much of the glomerular filtrate, so which means the capillaries which are present in the Bowman's capsule, how much filtrate they produce in a day, that is in 24 hours. So that is 160 liters. The next is urine produced from glomerular filtrate after reabsorption per day is 1.2 liters. urine that is produced from this glomerular filtrate after reabsorption. So there are some substances which get reabsorbed, so that we will study, right, in the coming slides. So there are certain things which get reabsorbed from the body, from these tubules every day. So after that, the urine produced is 1.2 liters per day. Okay, so I hope these facts about the uriniferous tubules are clear. And now they are, if you see the length of these kidney tubules, they are around 60 kilometers. So which means they are more than 60 kilometers. So they provide a huge surface area for reabsorption of things, the things which are reabsorbed from this water. So this is not just urine, but urine also has a specific composition, right? So we do not need the extra things to be added to the urine, and also we do not need the extra things to be added to the blood also. So there is a maintenance of all these things, there is a maintenance of composition of blood and the composition of blood, and it is done by the kidneys, right, the kidney tubules. Okay, so I hope all the facts are clear. Now the blood supply to the kidney tubules. So how is this blood supplied to the kidney tubules? So we know that the blood will come into the kidney tubules, they will filter the blood and they will send the purified blood back, right? So how is this blood supplied? So there are certain pair of renal arteries which branch off from the dorsal aorta and they enter into the respective kidneys, right? So this aorta brings blood, and this aorta, it breaks into certain smaller arteries which are called as arterioles, right? And when they are entering into the these renal tubules, sorry, not the renal tubule but the kidney tubules, so these are called as efferent arterioles, right? So these efferent arterioles, they break into small arterioles, they break into these capillaries from where the blood gets filtered out. So they pass through all these parts, PCT, then this loop of Henle, and from here all the rest of the blood is passed into the efferent arterioles, right? So this is efferent arterioles which carry this blood away from the heart. Now over here it will start merging into a single arteriole which is called as efferent arteriole. From efferent arteriole, this blood goes into the renal vein. From renal vein, this blood goes into the posterior vena cava, right? So do you remember the heart structure, the different blood vessels that we have studied? So from renal vein it goes into the posterior vena cava, right? So I hope these blood vessels which are related to the kidneys are clear to you. So whenever the word renal comes, right, so I have already told you that when the word renal comes, so this means it is related to kidneys. So renal vein will take all the blood away from the kidney and pour it into the posterior vena cava, and now posterior vena cava will take all the blood to the right side of the heart. Now talking about the functions of the kidneys, this is very important, this is super duper important. So the production of urines, what is the function of kidney? The function of kidney is the production of urine. So there are basically 3 steps: ultrafiltration, reabsorption and tubular secretion. So these are the 3 main steps in the production of urine. So the first step is ultrafiltration, where we are filtering the blood under a high pressure, right? So in this particular case, the blood will enter into the efferent arteriole. From efferent arteriole, the blood will enter into these capillaries, into the glomerulus. Now why the blood is flowing under pressure? Because when the blood is entering through these efferent arterioles, these arterioles, they are little wider, right? But as they are merging into the efferent arterioles, those arterioles which are taking blood away from this glomerulus, so they are narrower than the efferent arterioles. So that is why the blood flows under a great pressure, under hydrostatic pressure, right? So the high pressure causes the liquid part of the blood to filter out from the glomerulus. Now over here the blood gets filtered out, and all the filtrate it comes into this cup shaped structure which is called as the Bowman's capsule, and now the filtration is under extraordinary force, so that is why it is called as ultrafiltration. Now the filtrate which is entering into the renal tubules, so the filtrate entering into this tubule is called as glomerular filtrate, which contains water, which contains urea, which contains salts, glucose, and there are other plasma solutes. The thicker part of the blood which is left behind in the glomerulus, right? So all this waste, this water, urea, salts and other solutes, they are filtered into the Bowman's capsule. They come out when they are ultra filtered, they are filtered under a very high pressure. They enter into this from glomerulus, they enter into the Bowman's capsule, right? And there is a thick part of the blood which is left behind, which contains blood cells, which contains proteins and other large molecules. So they go back into the efferent arteriole and they are sent back to the blood, right? So the blood proceeding away from the glomerulus is relatively thick. So the blood which is going away from the glomerulus, right, that liquid portion of the blood which is not filtered is relatively thick as compared to this glomerular filtrate. The second step in the functioning of this nephron or the kidney tubule is reabsorption, right? So now we studied that when ultrafiltration is done, there are many things, like there are salts, there is glucose, there is a lot of water that comes into the Bowman's capsule, and from Bowman's capsule it enters into that convoluted part, right? Now all of them is not waste, and at this point of time this filtrate is not called as urine. This is not urine, right? Because urine has some definite composition, urine has some definite quantity of things that is present in it. So there is reabsorption of some of the things. So this complete solution is very dilute. There is a lot of water in it, right? So it is extremely dilute solution which contains a lot of useful material, which has glucose, which has some salts like sodium, which is needed by our body. So what happens in this second step, the filtrate passes down the tubule and it absorbs much of the water. So much water is being absorbed, reabsorbed, and the other useful substances, they also get reabsorbed in these tubules, right? And this absorption is called as selective absorption. So everything is not absorbed, only those things will be absorbed which are needed by the body, and up to an extent that is needed by our body, that does not disturb the composition of blood, right? So only those things will be absorbed. So the things that will be absorbed automatically, where will they go? They will go into the blood. So the things that are absorbed, they should not disturb the concentration of blood. So that is very important. So there is selective absorption. So all things are not absorbed, selectively few things are absorbed. So that is why it is called as a selective absorption, right? So I hope ultrafiltration and reabsorption are clear to you. So let us now see the last step, the third step of the functioning of these kidney tubules. Now the last step is tubular secretion. So there are certain substances like potassium and all those things which are not reabsorbed by the body and which are not needed by the body. They are passed down into DCT for forming urine, right? So these things are passed into the last part of the kidney tubule, that is DCT, and they form what? They form urine, right? So the passage involves the activity of cells of the tubular walls, and this is called as tubular secretion. So this passage involves the activity of cells of the tubular walls, and this is called as tubular secretion. So this passage involves the activity of cells of the tubular walls, and this is called as tubular secretion. So this passage involves the activity of cells of the tubular walls, and this is called as tubular secretion. So this passage actually has certain secretions from the tubules, right? So this is called as tubular secretion, and the filtrate which is left after reabsorption and the tubular secretion. So this filtrate, the complete thing is now called as urine. So finally, where is urine formed? It is formed in the DCT, the distal convoluted tubule of the kidneys. So let us now talk about the summary of urine formation. So there are the parts of the renal tubule where the urine is formed. The first is glomerulus. So glomerulus is the place where ultrafiltration is done, where the blood is passed under a very high pressure, and finally the waste products from the blood is filtered out, right, and they go into the Bowman's capsule. From the Bowman's capsule, it receives the glomerular filtrate and it passes it into the tubules, right. Then comes the PCT, that is the proximal convoluted tubule. So it reabsorbs most of the water, that is 2/3 of the water is reabsorbed by PCT, and glucose, some sodium and chloride ions are also reabsorbed. The next is the loop of Henle. So some of the absorption of water and sodium ion is also done by this loop, this hairpin structure, right. Then last comes is DCT, that is distal convoluted tubule. So there is reabsorption of the remaining chlorides and some water. So there are remaining chlorides and there is some water that is being reabsorbed by DCT, and its walls, it secretes potassium, it secretes some foreign chemicals like penicillin and other drugs, and finally this is the place where urine is formed. So as we can see that how much hard work is done by our kidneys in the formation of urine. So in this case, this kidney, it requires a lot of energy. So the energy requirement of kidneys is 6 to 7 times higher than muscles. So they need such a lot amount of energy, right. Now once the urine is formed in the DCT, right, so the final urine is formed, it is passed to the collecting tubule which is present in the pelvis region. From collecting tubule, it goes into the ureter. So do you remember that structure? So this was the kidney, these were the this was the region from where this ureter started, right. So it was little wider part in the pelvis. So all the urine is given to this part of the kidneys, and finally through ureters it goes into the bladder, right, to the urinary bladder, and this happens by ureterial peristalsis and under gravity. So there is constriction in the ureters which brings this blood into the urinary bladder, and also there is gravity, right. So gravity is also responsible for falling down of the urine from ureters into the urinary bladder. Finally this urine is expelled through urethra by relaxation of splinter muscles which are located at the opening of urinary bladder into the urethra under the impulse and of the nervous system, and this process is called as micturition, right. So this process is called what? Micturition. Clear? So I hope the whole concept of urine formation is clear to you. Now talking about the physical properties of the urine, the first is the color. So talking about the color of the urine is clear yellow. It is due to the presence of the pigment called urochrome. And now the color, sometimes the color is very deep yellow, and this all depends on the diet of the person. The second thing is the volume of urine. So it is 1 to 1.5 liters per day, and again it varies as per the diet, right. The next is the pH. So pH of urine is 5 to 8, right. So which is slightly acidic. It has some proteins which make it more acidic, and vegetable diet make it more alkaline. So if you take protein diet, so your urine will be very acidic, I mean it will be slightly acidic, and if you take vegetable diet, your urine is going to be alkaline. Okay, now the odor. The odor, how does it smell? So on standing, the smell of the urine is very strong. It is ammonia like due to the bacterial activity, and otherwise it has a very faint smell. So if the urine is like lying at a particular place, so that you must have visited the urinals, right, in the public toilet. So there is a very strong smell of urine, because that many of the people, they don't flush it, so the smell is, it is very stinky. It is basically the ammonia like, because there is some bacteria, there are bacteria which are also acting on it, and the smell is like ammonia like smell. The second thing is the specific gravity. The specific gravity of this urine is 1.003 to 1.035. So now the constituents of urine. So a normal human urine has a 95% water. So what you see in urine, so that is water, right? But there are 5% of the dissolved solid waste also. So the percentage of these solid waste, they may slightly vary as per the food that we take and the time taken after taking the food, right? So there are certain organic and inorganic solid waste that are present in our urine. So let us discuss what are they. The organic ones are urea, that is around 2 to 3 grams per liter, then keratin, that is 1.5 grams per liter, uric acid, that is 0.7 grams per liter, and others like 2.6 grams per liter. So there are certain inorganic substances also in grams per liter. So the first is sodium chloride, that is 9 grams per liter, potassium chloride 2.5 grams per liter, ammonia 0.6 grams per liter, and others 2.5 grams per liter. Now, why we are studying the constituents of urine? So if you must have undergone a urine test and then finally you have got a report. So in that report, you must have seen a certain percentage. So this is the percentage of urea in your urine. This is the percentage of say uric acid. This is the percentage of other organic salts that are present in your urine. So this quantity is very critical. So if any of the quantity gets exceeded in your in the urine, so that is actually a concern, right? Then you will have to go to the doctor. So you will have to go to different tests if there is a certain disbalance of any of these things in your body. So in that case, the constituents of urine, so these constituents are very critical, and their composition, the composition of urine is very critical. Now there are certain abnormal constituents in urine. So the first is blood cells, that is hematuria. So the condition where the blood passes with urine, and due to some infection in the urinary tract, so the kidney stones or the tumors, right? Then glucose, that is glycosuria. So there is excess glucose that passes with the urine due to diabetes mellitus, that is sugar. Okay, then there is albumin, which leads to a condition called albuminuria, and it is due to high blood pressure or increased permeability of the Bowman's capsule on the account of bacterial infection. So albumin protein is passed out via urine. So there is lot of albumin protein that is present in the urine. The next is the bile pigments. So talking about the bile pigments, so it happens due to anemia or hepatitis or liver cirrhosis, where urine may contain some bile pigments. Okay, so these are certain abnormal constituents which are present in the urine, which are which really the presence of these constituents is really a concern to a person, right? Now the regulation of urine output. So as all the processes in our body, they are regulated. In the same way, this process of urine output is also regulated. So there is pituitary gland and the diuresis, that is the increased production of urine. So this is all controlled by ADH hormone, which is secreted by the pituitary gland. So the posterior lobe of pituitary secretes this hormone, that is ADH, and this ADH If the secretion is reduced, there is increased production of urine, that is diuresis. And if the substances like liquid diet, tea and coffee, they are increased in the diet, right? So if you take a lot of water, if you take a lot of coffee or tea, so this increases the production of urine, and this leads to increase in formation of urine, which is called as diuretics, right? So diuresis and diuretics. Okay. Related to kidney, you must have heard about kidney stones, or you must have heard about gout, right? So how these conditions arise in kidney? So when the uric acid is relatively less soluble in water and it crystallizes and it gets deposited in the joints, so it causes gout, the disease called gout, which is called as Gatia, right? Then when there is excessive uric acid and it contains certain salts like calcium oxalate, it may be a source of kidney stones when the kidneys are not working, are not fully normal. So they are not working normally, they are not performing their functions properly, right? So in that case, the kidney stones might happen. Now the next topic is, the next term is osmoregulation. So kidneys, when they remove this waste, when they remove urea from the blood, they also regulate the composition of this blood, right? So the percentage of water and salts, they are very well regulated in our body. So this is called as osmoregulation, that is the regulation of osmotic pressure of our blood. So if you talk about summers, right? So summers and in winters. So in summers, if you mostly you drink a lot of water, right? But you urinate very less. So very often as compared to winters, you go to pee very less times, right? So this is because most of the water is lost from our body by perspiration, right? So sweating and all those, so there is loss of water through those sweating also, right? So in this case, the urine that is produced in summers is less as compared to winters, and also it is thicker as compared to winters. The next is cholera. So cholera is basically a disease in a patient where when the patient suffers from lot of vomiting and there are water bowel movements in the body, right? So in that case, what happens, the intestine of that person, so we know that large intestine absorbs a lot of water, right? But over here the intestine fails to absorb this water, so kidneys, they absorb lot of water, and sometimes along with the water lot of urea is also absorbed, right? So this, when the urea is absorbed by the patient, in that case the patient the urea gets accumulated in the body, and this even leads to the death of a person. So due to the accumulation of high quantities of urea in the body, that is uremia, right? And if in such case, in a person suffering from cholera, one has to give ORS, one has to take ORS, that is oral rehydrating solution. So this is the immediate remedy that we can do for that person, because we need that person to replace that water, right, and to remove that urea from the body. So the person is given ORS, oral rehydrating solution. The last topic over here is artificial kidneys. So these artificial kidney, you must have heard about some of the patients whose kidneys are not working properly, right? So in that case, if say there are two kidneys, right? So we have a pair of kidneys. If one of the kidney does not function, so that is not a matter of concern. But if both the kidneys stop their functioning, if they do not filter the blood, because their function is very important, they filter out the waste from the blood. So if the kidneys will not perform their function properly, so in that case a person has to take the help of an artificial kidney. So we also called it as a dialysing machine. So here the patient's blood is taken from the radial artery and from his arm, and it is put into the machine where from the blood urea, excess salts are being removed, and now this purified blood is returned back to the vein of that person in the same arm, right? So this is how this dialysis is done. At last, now let us speak about the summary of excretion in humans. So excretory substance, what is the first excretory substance that we are going to talk about? So that is carbon dioxide, that is CO2. So carbon dioxide is excreted through lungs, and as the gas it is a gas, it is expired from the lungs, right? So all the when the respiration happens, all the carbon dioxide is brought to the alveoli. In the alveoli, this carbon dioxide is taken by the alveoli and oxygen is given to the blood, right? Now this carbon dioxide is taken by our respiratory system and exhaled out, right? The next is the mineral salts or the nitrogenous waste products, so mainly urea, creatinine and the uric acid. So these are either secreted by kidneys. So kidneys, these are the constituent of urine in the kidneys, or skin, where they are thrown out of our body in the form of sweat. So though the sweat contains only small quantities of nitrogenous waste, so maximum is the excess water and salts that are removed from our body in the form of sweat. The next excretory substance is water. So water is secreted by kidneys, so it excretes a lot of water, right? So it is the main constituent of urine, then skin in the form of sweat, and from lungs in the form of water vapors. So along with the carbon dioxide, even the water vapors are expired by our body. So the water is lost from lungs as well. The next is bile pigments. So bile pigments, they form hemoglobin. Basically these are formed when hemoglobin is broken down. So it happens in liver, and through intestine they are poured into the bile juice, right? And from bile juice they go into the duodenum, and hence they are excreted out from our body. Let us now talk about some of the questions. So the first question is, study the diagram given alongside. Name the region in the kidney where the above structure is present. So you have to tell the region of the kidney, right? So what were the two regions? One is cortex and the next is medulla. So we know that except for this loop like structure, everything is present in the cortex, right? So this is the Bowman's capsule which is present in the cortex of kidney. Now name the parts labeled 1, 2, 3, right? So I didn't see 4, so this is basically 4. Okay, so what is 1? What is 1? So 1 is the, I will write over here, so 1 is the efferent arteriole. So this is the efferent arteriole, right? Now 2. So what are these? This is the glomerulus. So these are the capillaries which are present inside the Bowman's capsule. Now the third one. So this third one is nothing other than the Bowman's capsule, right? Now the fourth one is efferent arteriole. Correct? Okay, so the third part of the question is, name the stage involved in the formation of urine. So we have to tell that stage involved in the formation of urine. So over here what will happen? So this particular stage is involved in ultrafiltration. So it is the place where ultrafiltration of blood takes place. Now the D part. What is the technical term given to the process that occurring in 1 and 3? So sorry, 2 and 3. So 2 and 3. So what is that technical name that is given to this process? So over here what is happening? The blood is coming under coming from efferent arterioles. So efferent arterioles are little wider as compared to the efferent ones, right? Now they are entering into these capillaries. So in these capillaries the blood is flowing under a very high pressure, and the waste, the excess water and many other substances, they are coming from glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule, and this is called as ultrafiltration, right? So I hope this is clear. Question number next. So the question is, study the diagrams given alongside. So the diagram is this. So answer the following questions. So the first is, define excretion. So what is excretion? So excretion is the removal of harmful and unwanted nitrogenous wastes from our body. So this is excretion. The next is, why does the cortex of the kidney show dotted appearance? So this is the cortex and this is called as medulla, right? So why the cortex is showing this dotted appearance? So the reason for this dotted appearance is the presence of kidney tubules, right? So there are many kidney tubules which are present, that is why it shows a dotted appearance. Then why does the medulla shows the stripped appearance? Because there are conical conical pyramids which are present in the medulla, that is why it shows this this stripped appearance, right? The next one is, write the two differences in composition of blood flowing through A and B. So this is B, this is A. So A is basically the renal artery and B is renal artery and A is renal vein, right? So the renal artery brings the oxygenated blood along with a lot of waste into the kidney. Now this blood is filtered out and it is sent back through the renal vein. So this renal vein contains deoxygenated blood but does not contain any waste or urea in it, right? So this is the difference between the composition of blood in A and B. Now the next question is, study the diagram given alongside, identify the system. So what is this system? So this is the urinary system, right? Or the human excretory system. Next question is, label the parts marked 2 and 4. So this is 2 and this is 4. So what is this? This is what? This is ureter, right? And what is it? So this is the fourth, is the splinter muscles, right? Now we have to mention the function of part 5. So 5 is urethra. So the function of urethra is to expel out urine that is present in urinary bladder, right? So I hope this is clear. C part of the question is, name the structural and functional units of part marked 1. So 1 is marked for kidneys, right? So this is kidney. So the structural and functional unit of kidney is nephron or kidney tubule, right? So there are different names for this. So kidney tubule. The next is D. What is the fluid that accumulates in part 3? So this is the part 3, right? Urinary bladder. So what fluid accumulates in part 3? So that is urine. And which is the main nitrogenous waste present in this urine? So the main nitrogenous waste in urine is urea. So students, I hope the complete chapter, the excretory system, is clear to every one of you. So this chapter is very important. This chapter is super duper simple and super duper interesting too. So I hope I was able to make it simpler for you. So now we will meet in our next chapter where we will be studying about the new things, more new things. So till then, you take care, and as you all know, LearnoHub free है पर best है.